The year was 1969, and in the heart of an Australian summer night, a profound stillness had settled over the dense eucalyptus forest. This was not an empty silence, but a quiet, living tapestry woven from the unseen breath of ancient trees and the slow, gentle pulse of the nocturnal world. The air itself was a warm, heavy presence, almost tangible, saturated with the unique aromatic essence that only oil-scented eucalyptus leaves could impart. This rich, calming perfume drifted languidly from the immense overarching canopy, mingling with a soft, pervasive humidity that softened every sound, blurred every visual edge, and infused the entire landscape with a deep, comforting relaxation. It created a peaceful, enveloping atmosphere, a sense of quietude so complete it seemed to hold the vast woodland in a stable, unwavering embrace, a truly peaceful wilderness under a calm night sky. Deep within this tranquil, silent nature, a form began its careful awakening. It was a fox, its magnificent rust-red fur a muted yet vibrant splash of warmth against the deep, dappled greens and grays of the forest's understory. With a quiet grace that was inherent to its being, it emerged from a sheltered hollow, a cool, shadowed alcove tucked beneath the gnarled, robust roots of an ancient gum tree. Its movements were unhurried, a slow, deliberate unfolding into the vastness and mystery of the night. Each of its slender paws, tipped with soft, resilient pads, was placed with an exquisite, almost weightless care upon the layered forest floor. These initial steps were a gentle, tactile exploration, a tentative testing of the earth, before settling into a steady, consistent, and predictable rhythm that bespoke a creature deeply at home in its sleepy woodland surroundings. The floor of this peaceful forest was a complex, textured tapestry, offering a rich variety of sensations and subtle sounds beneath its paws. Dry strips of bark, long and curling, having peeled naturally from the smooth, pale trunks of the majestic eucalyptus trees, lay scattered like forgotten, brittle scrolls. These pieces, ranging in size from slender ribbons to broader, papery sheets, formed a delicate, uneven surface. Interspersed among these were countless fallen gum leaves, their elongated shapes now curled and crinkled, dried by the relentless summer sun, and then softened by the gentle humidity of the night. These layers, a blend of resilience and fragility, released the very faintest dry crackles and whispers as the fox's careful paws pressed against them. It was a soft, almost imperceptible symphony, a quiet rhythmic accompaniment to its passage, sounds that quickly faded, absorbed almost instantly by the dense, humid air, leaving a renewed sense of stillness in its wake. The fox padded through these delicate, rustling layers, its body held low and close to the ground, a continuous, fluid movement along winding trails that were more felt than seen, paths known intimately through countless nocturnal explorations. Its tail, a luxuriant brush of soft, rich fur, swept gently behind it, a silent, almost ethereal movement that left no lasting trace upon the forest floor, a fleeting mark of its journey through the quiet forest. Frequently, the fox would pause. Its elegant head, held low and alert, would tilt just slightly, its keen senses reaching out, effortlessly absorbing the nuanced information carried on the still, warm air. The soft ears, beautifully shaped and tipped with fine, dark fur, twitched with a quiet, almost imperceptible sensitivity. They gathered the myriad sounds of the sleeping forest with a quiet focus. The distant insect choruses formed a constant, low, rhythmic hum, a predictable, almost hypnotic pulse in the vast silence, a symphony composed of the insistent chirps of unseen crickets, the drowsy, intermittent drone of cicadas, and the almost imperceptible buzzing of smaller, unseen nocturnal insects, all blending into a soothing, predictable background melody. Occasionally, from high above, within the deep, shadowed canopy, came the soft, barely audible flutter of nocturnal birds. These creatures, settling deeper into their chosen roosts or shifting from one swaying branch to another, created a momentary gentle rustle of leaves and feathers that quickly gave way to the renewed, comforting stillness. These were the only interruptions to the profound peace, sounds that brought a sense of stability and reassurance, rather than any sudden, startling surprise. The forest breathed, and the fox listened, a harmonious part of its breathing, experiencing a deep relaxation. A subtle shift in the warm night wind, barely a breath against the skin, would sometimes weave its way through the dense understory. It carried with it new scent trails, ephemeral, invisible threads of information carried on the humid air. The fox's quiet whiskers, fine and delicate, trembled almost imperceptibly as they gathered these invisible messages, interpreting them with an innate, ancient wisdom. Its nose, a point of focused alertness and exquisite precision, sifted through the complex, layered tapestry of aromas that permeated the forest. It registered the dampness of recently fallen soil, the subtle sweetness of hidden blossoms that bloomed only in the cool of night, the rich earthiness of decaying wood and leaf litter. And among these always were the faint, compelling hints of small prey, a tiny scurry, a barely perceptible rustle, a fleeting warmth that suggested a creature moving with its own quiet purpose between ancient roots or nestled beneath patches of low-lying vegetation. There was no fierce hunting intent in the fox's immediate response, no frantic urgency, only a deep, abiding curiosity, a calm, measured interest in the slow, natural unfolding of the night's secret life, a quiet pursuit of the rhythm of the forest. The gentle night ambience embraced it, fostering a feeling of safety. Above, the towering, majestic trunks of the eucalyptus trees formed a grand, dark, silent architecture that stretched seemingly endlessly into the unseen heavens. Their smooth, pale surfaces, often streaked with darker patches of bark, rose like ancient pillars, reaching for the distant, calm night sky. Through the intricate lattice of their widespread branches and the dense curtain of their leaves, fragmented moonlight filtered down in shimmering patches and elongated streaks. These silvered fragments danced across the forest floor, painting fleeting, shifting patterns of light and shadow on the dry bark and the countless fallen leaves. The environment felt exquisitely alive but beautifully dim, consistently bathed in a soft, ethereal glow that gently softened all contours, blurred sharp edges, and deepened the existing shadows into comforting pools of darkness. Tiny specks of drifting insect light, brief, sporadic flashes of luminescence, occasionally caught the eye, adding another delicate, almost ephemeral layer to the serene magic of the peaceful forest night. It was a world of quiet contrasts, where light and shadow played an eternal, gentle game, contributing to the overall deep relaxation of the setting, a truly safe feeling. The fox adjusted its pace with a natural, continuous rhythm, a perfect synthesis of its instincts and its environment. It transitioned seamlessly between moments of quiet stealth, where its movements were barely a whisper, and periods of calm, focused observation, where it would stand perfectly still, a statue carved from shadow and stillness. It was a slow, deliberate progression, never rushed, always controlled, moving forward with an unshakable inner peace. This was the silent genesis of a long nocturnal journey, a gradual exploration step by soft step, deeper and deeper into the changing terrain of the vast Australian wilderness. With each gentle, quiet step, the fox moved further into the comforting embrace of the summer night. It was a steady advance, a peaceful journey through a landscape that was both familiar and subtly, beautifully evolving. The sense of comfort was profound, an intrinsic part of being within this stable, natural world. It was a creature perfectly at rest within its environment, exploring quiet clearings, padding through areas that resembled soft meadows of dry grasses, and following winding trails that promised only more peace and discovery. The deep relaxation of the forest seemed to infuse its very being, guiding it towards the next phase of its tranquil exploration, leaving behind the immediate calm of this initial eucalyptus veil for the promises of deeper, more enclosed spaces. The calm night sky watched over, a vast, silent guardian, its distant stars twinkling with a sleepy brilliance as the fox continued its slow, deliberate wandering woodland paths. This quiet pursuit of discovery was a gentle narrative, an ongoing story without end, merely a shift in scenery, always stable, always predictable, always safe, a serene progression towards the deep canopy that awaited. Chapter 2. The night deepened, a vast velvety canvas unfurling across the Australian sky, slowly replacing the last lingering hint of twilight that had softened the edges of the distant horizon. The fox, with its rust-red fur blending seamlessly with the muted tones of the forest under the growing darkness, continued its gentle journey. Its padded paws carried it with a quiet determination, no longer simply on the forest floor, but now beginning a gradual ascent. The terrain beneath its careful steps began to shift, leading upwards into a slightly elevated section of the expansive woodland. Here, the sturdy trunks of ancient eucalyptus trees rose even taller, their forms becoming more defined against the pale backdrop of a starlit canopy. Within this new elevation, the forest began to transform. Intricate networks of tangled vines reached down from high above, their woody tendrils weaving among the suspended branches that swayed with an almost imperceptible rhythm in the calm night air. These natural draperies created new layers of quietude, absorbing stray sounds and contributing to a sense of enclosed comfort. The air here felt subtly different, cooler than the lower, more humid layers it had just passed through, and it carried a fainter yet distinct aroma of eucalyptus, now mingled with the fresh scent of damp earth rising from beneath the shadowed understory. This elevated space offered a different kind of sanctuary, a peaceful pocket of the forest. The night continued its deep, silent progression. The earlier distant chorus of insects had softened, becoming a more diffused hum that seemed to cradle the entire sleepy woodland. This heavier silence was occasionally punctuated by the soft creaks of large branches, moving with the slow, almost imperceptible shifts of the vast trees in their long, still slumber. Far away, a solitary owl offered its calm, haunting call, a gentle melody that reinforced the quiet nature ambiance, then settled back into its own silent vigil. The sounds were sparse yet full, each one a thread woven into the fabric of the tranquil night. The fox navigated this elevated realm with a mindful grace. Its body, low to the ground, moved with a fluid motion as it encountered the natural bridges formed by fallen logs. These ancient timbers, long settled into the embrace of the earth, spanned small dips and rises in the uneven ground. Each step was taken with careful precision, its slender paws testing the surface before committing its full weight. The texture of the old bark beneath its paws was rough and stable, providing a comforting, secure pathway through the gathering shadows. It followed these natural lines, its path guided by instinct and the quiet flow of the landscape. Above the fox, the dense canopy spread like a vast, dark ceiling, punctuated by countless tiny openings. Through these natural apertures, the distant starlight filtered down. The light did not pour in a broad, bright beam, but rather splintered into fragmented silver streaks that danced and shimmered gently on the bark of the trees and the surface of the vines. These luminous threads created moving shadow patterns that drifted across the forest floor with a slow, hypnotic rhythm, like a silent, ever-changing dance. The interplay of light and shadow brought a soft mystery to the deep canopy, transforming the familiar shapes of the trees into something both new and deeply peaceful. As the night continued its steady journey, a faint change in the humidity touched the air. A subtle shift carried on an almost imperceptible breeze. This suggested the gentle approach of inland air currents, carrying with them the vastness of the distant plains. Yet here, within the enclosed forest, their presence was merely a whispered hint. The air felt a little crisper, a tiny bit drier, a quiet promise of further shifts in the nocturnal atmosphere. The fox, with its soft ears twitching, processed these minute changes, each detail contributing to its continuous sensory map of the environment. It briefly halted its wanderings, its rust-red fur barely stirring in the still air. Its head, held low, turned slightly towards a patch of thicker undergrowth, observing a subtle rustling movement. The sound was quiet, a mere whisper against the heavy silence, but it spoke of unseen life, perhaps a small foraging creature moving among the dry leaves. The fox remained perfectly still for a long moment, a statue of quiet contemplation, its keen senses gathering information without urgency. Its quiet whiskers trembled slightly, taking in the faintest vibrations. This brief pause was a moment of pure stillness, a natural part of its nocturnal rhythm, a gentle pause before continuing its path. Then, with the same unhurried grace, the fox continued its journey. Its cautious, fluid motion carried it onward, deeper into the complex and enclosed heart of this elevated forest section. The trees here grew closer, their branches intertwined more tightly, and the hanging vines formed an even denser curtain, creating a labyrinth of natural pathways. Each turn brought a new vista of shadow and soft light, a new arrangement of bark and leaf. The environment felt increasingly sheltered and intimate, a haven of peace where the night unfolded with quiet, predictable stability. The fox moved as if it were a part of this ancient, sleepy woodland, blending seamlessly into its calm embrace, content in its continuous, gentle exploration, steadily progressing deeper into the whispering solitude of the forest night. Chapter 3. The gentle journey downward began, a soft inclination of the earth leading away from the tangled complexities of the elevated canopy. The fox moved with unhurried grace, each slender paw placed with thoughtful slowness, navigating the decreasing gradient of the forest floor. The air, which had been layered and cool amongst the high branches, now carried a subtle shift, a hint of approaching moisture as the forest deepened around a hidden vein of water. The tall eucalyptus trees, which had previously formed a ceiling of swaying shadows, now stood as silent, columnar sentinels on either side, their bark peeling in long, smooth strips that lay quietly upon the ground. The dappled moonlight that filtered through their sparse leaves grew more concentrated here, gathering into pools of pale light that illuminated patches of the rich, dark soil. With each careful step, the rust-red fur of the fox seemed to absorb the quiet stillness of the descending path. It passed over roots that rose like sleeping serpents from the earth, their surfaces cool and firm beneath its sensitive pads. The forest sounds became more muted, the distant owl calls now softer echoes as the immediate surroundings filled with the anticipation of something new. A fresh scent began to drift on the barely perceptible breeze. The cool, clean smell of moving water, interwoven with the damp earth and the subtle fragrance of unseen creekside plants. The fox's soft ears twitched gently, discerning the faint murmuring sounds that grew steadily clearer with every step. Eventually, the descent smoothed into a more level plain, and through a final curtain of dense undergrowth, the fox emerged onto the narrow, rocky bank of a creek. This was a vein of flowing water, winding through the heart of the eucalyptus forest, its presence a calm, constant hum in the peaceful night. The water moved slowly, a silver ribbon meandering over countless smooth stones that lined its shallow bed. Fractured moonlight, broken by the overhanging leaves and the rippling surface, danced across the water, creating an ever-changing mosaic of light and shadow. Each tiny ripple caught the gleam, sending shimmers that shifted and stretched like fleeting dreams across the dark, wet stones. The air along the creek line was distinctly cooler, a gentle balm against the summer night's lingering warmth. A delicate mist, barely visible, seemed to rise from the surface of the water, a whisper of coolness influenced by the steady, quiet flow. The fox paused at the edge, its keen eyes observing the subtle movements in the water. Its quiet whiskers trembled almost imperceptibly as it took in the unique sensory tapestry of this new environment. Small insects, drawn by the glowing reflections on the water, danced in the air, their tiny bodies creating soft, ephemeral flickers of movement above the surface, adding a delicate vibrancy to the tranquil scene. With deliberate precision, the fox lowered its head, taking a long, slow drink from the cool, clear water. Each sip was unhurried, a moment of profound comfort in the deep stillness of the night. As it drank, its attention remained softly tuned to the creek, its sensitive paws resting lightly on the damp earth of the bank. Vibrations in the water, imperceptible to most, hinted at the hidden life beneath the surface, perhaps a small freshwater yabby or a tiny fish moving between the smooth stones. This gentle monitoring was a part of its deep connection to the natural world, a quiet, instinctual awareness that guided its every action. The creek became a natural guide, a winding trail of water through the evolving night landscape, The fox began to follow its course, stepping carefully along the damp edges, its movements fluid and unhurried. Occasionally, a paw would dip momentarily into the shallow flow, feeling the cool rush of the water over its pads. The rhythm of the creek was soothing, a continuous, peaceful sound that accompanied its journey. The banks themselves were an intricate tapestry of smooth, water-worn rocks, occasional clumps of hardy grasses, and the gnarled roots of eucalyptus trees that stretched towards the water, seeking its life-giving sustenance. The moonlight continued its fractured play, stretching and contracting with the water's gentle movement. It illuminated the texture of the smooth stones beneath the surface, revealing patterns of pale greens and soft browns. The fox moved with a calm focus, its keen senses absorbing every detail of the environment. The familiar scent of eucalyptus leaves, heavier and more concentrated in the moist air, mingled with the earthy aroma of the riverbed. There was a stability in this constant flow, a predictable path laid out by the water itself. Its tail gently sweeping the ground as it walked, the fox maintained a steady, unhurried pace. The quiet forest felt safe, wrapped in the soft embrace of the night. There was no urgency, only the steady progression of the journey. It was a time for observation, for lingering by the stream, for truly resting in the simple act of movement. The reflections on the water became a continuous, shifting painting, a silent companion to its quiet wandering. The coolness of the creek air settled around its rust-red fur, offering a subtle, refreshing comfort as it followed the watercourse deeper into the serene heart of the sleeping woodland. Each gentle curve of the creek presented a slightly new vista, a fresh perspective on the same enduring landscape, a peaceful, stable journey continuing into the soft, silent depths of the night. Chapter 4. The gentle flow of the creek lessened its current, softly guiding the fox forward until the water broadened into a wide, shallow expanse, becoming less a channel and more a spreading sheet. This slow transformation led into a marshy hollow, a depression within the forest floor where the earth grew waterlogged and softened beneath ancient eucalyptus roots. These roots, gnarled and thick, rose like dark sculptures from the saturated soil, forming intricate pathways just above the water's quiet surface. Here, the ground layer was dominated by dense, tall reeds, standing close together in a silent, watchful assembly, their green and brown stalks creating a delicate, swaying curtain. The summer night humidity, which had been a constant companion since the journey began, intensified within this enclosed space. It clung to the fox's rust-red fur, a soft, damp embrace that settled gently upon its sleek coat. The air felt heavy and still, holding the scent of damp earth, decaying leaves, and the subtle, sweet perfume of marsh vegetation. The fox padded slowly, its slender paws choosing each step with care, pressing down lightly onto the muddy edges between the shallow pools. These pools, dark and tranquil, lay like forgotten mirrors across the hollow, reflecting distorted fragments of the moonlit sky and the towering silhouettes of the eucalyptus trees. Each small ripple created by a paw stirred the still surface, sending out widening circles that disturbed faint insect swarms, causing them to rise in a soft, shimmering cloud for a moment before settling back down. The environment here was more enclosed, the reeds rising high above the fox, creating a natural, peaceful maze. The air, thick with moisture, muted distant sounds, but the persistent chorus of unseen frog calls began to echo, a calm, rhythmic pulsation through the humid stillness. Each call was a gentle sound, a testament to the thriving life hidden within the marsh. The fox paused repeatedly, its soft ears twitching, listening to these distant voices, its head slightly lowered in a posture of quiet observation. Its eyes, adjusted to the low light, scanned the intricate movements within the reed clusters, searching for any subtle sign of the small creatures that shifted quietly beneath the cover of the dense vegetation. The ground was a patchwork of moist earth and thin, cold water, each step a careful negotiation across the soft, yielding surface. The fox moved with a deliberate rhythm, a slow, continuous progression through this watery world. Its tail, a graceful brush of russet, swept gently from side to side, maintaining a steady balance. The reflections in the dark pools offered glimpses of the overarching branches, the fragmented moonlight appearing broken and softened, diffused by the humid air. The air itself seemed to possess a certain comfort, a damp quietness that wrapped around the fox as it moved deeper into the hollow. As the night slowly deepened, subtle hints of a change began to drift through the air. A faint coolness, barely perceptible, touched the tips of the reeds and the surface of the stagnant water. It was a gentle suggestion that the peak of the warm summer night was gradually passing, making way for the slow approach of colder pre-dawn air. This subtle shift in temperature was a quiet signal, a stable progression in the long nocturnal journey. The fox continued its methodical path, its focus unwavering, moving with a calm certainty that spoke of routine and deep understanding of its surroundings. The marsh offered a sense of safe passage, a quiet corridor through the vast wilderness, where the passage of time was marked by the fading warmth and the deepening silence of the sleeping world. The soft whispers of the reeds and the intermittent chorus of frogs created a harmonious, peaceful soundscape, ensuring a feeling of stability and comfort as the fox quietly made its way through the reed-filled wet hollow, slowly approaching the next phase of its nocturnal exploration. Chapter 5. The rustling whispers of the reeds slowly faded behind the fox as the marshy hollow gradually gave way to a firmer path. The ground beneath its paws grew more solid, transitioning from the soft, waterlogged soil to a mosaic of stones and packed earth. This gentle shift in terrain signaled the approach of something new, a change in the deep night landscape. The faint chill that had begun to drift through the reed-filled air in the hollow now seemed to settle more distinctly, a soft touch against the fox's rust-red fur. It was a subtle signal of the night's slow, steady progression. The path began to curve, following the invisible line where the narrow creek, which had once meandered gently, now promised to widen. With each quiet step, the faint gurgle of water grew clearer, replacing the muted frog calls and insect hums that had filled the air in the dense hollow. The fox moved with a calm, deliberate rhythm, its body low, adapting effortlessly to the evolving textures underfoot. The air, though still carrying the lingering scent of damp earth and growing things, now felt lighter, less heavy with the intense humidity of the marsh. Soon, the faint shimmer of moving water became visible through the sparse undergrowth, reflecting fragmented patterns of the night sky. The creek had indeed transformed, opening into a more substantial river corridor. Here, the banks were lined with dark, ancient basalt rocks, their surfaces smooth and cool to the touch where the water had polished them over long seasons. These exposed basalt formations presented a different kind of quiet beauty under the vast expanse of starlight. The river's movement was faster here, a steady, rhythmic flow that created a continuous, soft sound. It was a comforting murmur, a constant presence that now filled the peaceful forest night, a gentle lullaby replacing the earlier stillness. This constant whisper of water was a quiet reassurance, a stable sound in the quiet wilderness. The fox watched the currents for a long moment, its soft ears twitching slightly to capture the nuances of the water's voice. Stepping onto the uneven stone edges of the riverbank, the fox began to travel along the corridor. Each stone was a unique platform, some large and flat, others jagged and worn. The fox's slender paws found purchase with slow, careful precision, testing the stability before committing its weight. The journey along these dark, cool rocks felt like a deliberate dance, a quiet movement through the moonlit landscape. Occasionally, the river branched into shallow channels where the currents swirled and broke around protrusions of basalt. With a graceful, unhurried motion, the fox would leap across these narrow gaps, landing softly on the next stone with an almost imperceptible sound. There was no urgency in these movements, only a natural, fluid efficiency, a comfortable rhythm of progression. As the river corridor widened, the surrounding trees grew slightly more distant, allowing for a greater sense of open exposure. The air became perceptibly cooler now, a truly distinct change from the humid warmth of the marsh. This gentle coolness, influenced by the moving water and the wider space, wrapped around the fox, a refreshing contrast that hinted at the slow advance of the night. The calm night sky, dotted with countless stars, felt closer and clearer above this more open expanse. Starlight, unhindered by dense canopy, now reflected with greater intensity in fragmented streaks across the moving water. These dancing lights created intricate, shifting patterns, appearing and disappearing as the currents twisted and turned. The river became a living canvas of silver and shadow, a serene spectacle under the silent watch of the night. The fox's quiet whiskers trembled as it took in the subtle beauty of the scene, its gaze lingering on the interplay of light and dark. The fox's attention began to sharpen, its focus drawn to the water's surface and the shallow areas near the riverbanks. Its eyes, accustomed to the dim light, scanned for any slight disturbance, any faint ripple that might indicate movement beneath the surface. Small fish shadows darting in the clear, cool water occasionally caught its eye, their fleeting forms mere blurs against the darker riverbed. The soft mystery of the river's hidden life added a gentle layer of interest to the journey. A gentle breeze carrying the clean scent of fresh water and wet stone drifted through the corridor. It was a peaceful breeze, a calming breath of the wilderness that offered a deep relaxation to the animal as it padded along. The fox paused once more, its body still, its ears swiveling almost imperceptibly, listening to the harmonious sounds of the flowing water and the distant, almost imperceptible hum of the quiet forest. It was a moment of complete comfort, a deep sense of belonging within this peaceful mind. The basalt riverbank corridor continued its winding course, a natural guide through this section of the night. The fox followed its steady direction, allowing the river's persistent flow to shape its journey. This transition from the enclosed, humid forest to the more open, cooler river geography felt like a natural unfolding, a smooth narrative progression of the night's slow passage. With each turn of the river, the landscape presented new variations of the dark, reflective rock and the constantly moving water. The fox moved onward, its steps unhurried, its presence a quiet part of the serene environment. The coolness in the air continued to deepen ever so slightly, a constant companion as the hours of the summer night gently moved forward. The journey was a quiet exploration, a peaceful and stable experience. The fox continued its wandering woodland path, completely immersed in the gentle night ambience, toward the next quiet shift in the vast, sleeping land. It carried a feeling of deep relaxation, its body moving in a steady rhythm with the subtle flow of the peaceful wilderness. Chapter 6. The river, which had flowed with such focused energy through its basalt corridor, now gradually broadened. Its banks began to recede, easing the water's earlier rush into a wider, more expansive basin. Here, the warm air of the long summer night met currents that were subtly cooling, initiating a mesmerizing natural dance. From the surface of the slow-moving water, a delicate fog began to rise, a soft, ethereal vapor that coiled and unfurled with a serene, unhurried grace. These drifting fog layers settled gently above the water, obscuring the distant edges of the night. The fox, its rust-red fur a warm, muted shade against the deepening night, continued its quiet journey along these changing banks. Each step was placed with thoughtful precision onto the damp earth. The landscape around it was no longer sharply defined, but was now presented in varying degrees of obscurity. Visibility shifted constantly, like a waking dream, between moments of gentle clarity and blurred, softened forms. One moment, a twisted root might emerge distinctly from the mist. The next, it would soften into a vague, indistinct shadow. The quiet forest seemed to hold its breath as the fog steadily thickened. The air itself felt transformed within this basin. It was no longer simply humid, but carried a new, profound moistness that clung delicately to the fox's whiskers and settled upon its fine fur. This moistness also served as a gentle canvas for a tapestry of mixed scents. The clean, earthy smell of the river water blended with the fainter, more organic notes of algae from the unseen depths. Beyond these, carried on the soft, gentle night ambiance, were the distant perfumes of damp vegetation from the river's far side, hinting at unseen plant life. The fox's quiet whiskers trembled as it took in these layers of aroma, each inhalation a soft exploration of its immediate world. As the fog deepened, the fox naturally slowed its pace even further. Its movements became deliberate, each slender paw testing the ground ahead before committing. This reduced visibility required a gentle adaptation. Its acute senses of hearing and smell became even more central to its navigation through the peaceful wilderness. The world, once seen, was now primarily felt and heard and scented. The silent nature of the fog muffled distant sounds, drawing the fox's focus closer to the immediate surroundings. It moved with a serene confidence, trusting its instinct, wandering woodland paths that were now veiled in soft gray. Occasionally, the glassy surface of the water would break with a sudden gentle ripple. These were often caused by unseen fish, their quiet movements disturbing the serene stillness beneath the fog. These brief, luminous ripples spread outwards, catching the faint, fragmented starlight that managed to pierce through the vapor. For a fleeting moment, a silver gleam would appear, only to vanish again as the fog slowly reclaimed its quiet dominion over the water's surface. Each ripple was a soft reminder of the unseen life that continued its own calm routine beneath the shrouds of mist. The environment around the fox grew increasingly atmospheric, imbued with a sense of soft mystery. This uncertainty was not unsettling, but rather encouraged a deeper sense of quiet observation. The drifting haze softened the edges of reality, making the familiar feel new and gently unexplored. The summer night, which had felt so warm and vibrant earlier, now began its subtle cooling, marking a gentle transition. A faint, almost imperceptible coolness began to weave its way through the air, hinting at the approaching influence of pre-dawn stillness. The fox continued, its presence a quiet harmony with the peaceful shift in the air and the water. It paused, perhaps to simply absorb the unique feeling of the damp, fog-laden air, before continuing its slow, deliberate padding along the partially hidden riverbanks, embracing the profound calm of the moment. The quiet night enveloped everything in its comforting embrace, preparing the way for whatever new landscape lay beyond the soft, unfolding mist. Chapter 7. The lingering fog from the river basin began to thin in patches, revealing a subtle shift in the landscape. The broader expanse of flowing water had, by degrees, surrendered its momentum, its steady currents losing their push. Here, the river system gently dissolved into a vast marsh threshold, a boundary where distinct watery pathways faded into a tapestry of dark, quiescent pools. The air, which had carried the mixed scents of moving water and algae, now settled, becoming heavier and more still. A different kind of scent rose from the stagnant depths, a rich, earthy aroma of decaying leaves and submerged plant life, creating new layers in the quiet night. The fox, with its rust-red fur a soft silhouette against the dimness, moved with an inherent cautiousness, its journey now leading it onto this unfamiliar, yielding ground. Each step was a deliberate probe, a gentle testing of the unstable surface beneath its paws. The ground felt different here, a soft blend of saturated soil and decaying vegetation that cushioned its weight, yet threatened to give way. It placed a slender paw forward, feeling the quiet resistance of the earth, then shifted its weight, slowly, ensuring a firm purchase before lifting the next. This careful rhythm of advancement maintained a comforting predictability in its progress. Around the fox, the dark pools lay like silent mirrors, reflecting only the deepest indigo of the sky, where a few distant stars still held their peaceful glow. These stagnant waters were framed by a dense, intricate network of tangled roots, gnarled and ancient, snaking across the surface and disappearing into the depths. Submerged branches, long fallen from unseen trees, created mysterious shapes just beneath the water's surface, their forms softened by the liquid. The fox's quiet whiskers trembled slightly, gathering the complex scents that now saturated the humid air. The airflow in this particular part of the marsh was noticeably reduced, creating pockets of heavy, humid stillness that clung to the fur, a gentle, pervasive dampness. This lack of movement meant that sounds, too, were dampened, absorbed by the soft, waterlogged environment. Only the quietest of movements broke the profound peace. From within the dark pools, Small amphibian creatures stirred, their unseen passages creating faint, luminous ripples that spread slowly outward across the surface before vanishing again into the calm reflection. These brief disturbances were the only visible signs of life in the quiet depths, adding a soft mystery to the deep relaxation of the marsh. The fox's posture remained low and alert, its body close to the earth, a natural response to the complexity of the terrain. Its ears, normally twitching with soft curiosity, were now angled slightly forward, gathering the whispers of the marsh. It navigated through the intricate root networks, stepping over some, carefully placing its paws between others, avoiding the slick surfaces that might cause a slip. This intricate dance of movement was slow and deliberate, a steady progression through the winding pathways of the wetland. The focus of its attention was entirely on the immediate environment, the shifting ground, the subtle contours of the roots. With each careful movement, a stronger organic scent rose, a mixture of damp soil, rich decay, and the green tang of growing marsh plants. This pervasive aroma was a constant companion, enveloping the fox in a cocoon of natural smells that spoke of deep, primordial earth. The air, though heavy, was not stifling. Instead, it offered a different kind of calm, a sense of quiet enclosure within the vastness of the natural world. The still waters held the scent close, allowing it to linger, adding to the feeling of stable, unchanging peace. A subtle cooling continued to descend upon the landscape. The earlier warmth of the summer night, which had permeated the eucalyptus forest, now seemed a distant memory. The air in the marsh, already heavy with humidity, carried a distinct coolness that hinted at a change far beyond the passing hours. It was a gentle, pervasive chill that spoke of deeper transitions, making the marsh feel less like the height of summer night and more like an approaching seasonal shift, even as summer still officially held sway. This quiet cooling offered a comforting reassurance of the natural cycles of the earth. The fox paused near a cluster of reeds that marked the edge of a particularly dark pool. Its soft eyes scanned the placid surface, its breath slow and steady. There was no urgency, only a patient observation of the silent world around it. The stillness of the water reflected the stillness within the creature, a mirror of deep relaxation. The tangled roots, which had seemed a challenge, now offered a sense of comforting structure, guiding its path through the soft uncertainty of the mud. Each root was a stable anchor in the yielding ground. It took another careful step, its tail gently sweeping the ground behind it, leaving a faint, temporary mark in the damp earth. The continuous, predictable nature of its movement created a sense of safety and stability. The marsh, despite its unfamiliar terrain, was a place of quiet exploration, a new chapter in its nocturnal wandering. The water did not rush, the wind did not gust, and every movement, both of the fox and of the hidden creatures, unfolded with a slow, gentle grace. The heavy air pressed down softly, a calming weight. The pervasive dampness of the marsh was a new texture against its rust-red fur, a comforting coolness that balanced the lingering warmth from its earlier journey. It lingered by these slow-moving waters, absorbing the silent ambiance, letting the unique character of this transitional zone settle around it. The world here was muted, the colors deepened by the absence of direct light, the sounds hushed by the thick air and absorbent ground. This quiet landscape invited a peaceful mind, an untroubled progression through the deep night. The network of submerged branches and roots formed a natural labyrinth, yet the fox navigated it without haste, its movements economical and smooth. It did not push against the environment, but flowed with it, an integral part of the quiet wilderness. The faint, organic scent layers continued to shift, offering a constant, soft sensory input that kept its senses gently engaged without causing any stimulation. The subtle feeling of the earth yielding beneath its paws was a continuous, soft reminder of its journey's steady progression. As the fox continued to follow the winding trails within this marsh threshold, the dark pools gave way to ever more intricate root systems. These roots rose and fell, forming low ridges and shallow depressions, each contour guiding the fox's careful passage. The approaching seasonal shift felt more pronounced here, a pervasive coolness in the air that spoke of the deep rest the earth awaited. The entire environment hummed with a low, imperceptible vibration of quiet life, a lullaby of the nocturnal world. The deep stillness of the marsh provided a profound contrast to the earlier rushing river, creating a sense of completion for that previous leg of the journey. Now, a new kind of peace settled in, one defined by the soft, stagnant waters and the intricate, unchanging patterns of roots. The fox's quiet journey through this particular landscape was a testament to the patient exploration of the natural world, a gentle unfolding of discovery. The air, though thick, held a promise of continued calm as the night slowly, predictably, moved onward. Chapter 8. The dark, stagnant pools of the marsh gently faded, giving way to a new, intricate landscape. The water that had rested so still now hinted at deeper currents, subtly altering the character of the terrain. The marsh itself transformed, softening its wide, open expanse into a dense labyrinth woven from countless towering reeds. These blades of grass, some reaching far above the fox's head, created shifting corridors, narrow and twisting, over channels of soft, yielding mud. It was a place of quiet enclosure, a world of vertical lines and muted greens under the deep velvet night. The fox began to weave through these natural pathways, its rust-red fur a warm, soft hue against the cool, damp stems. Movement here was constrained, each step a thoughtful placement. The ground beneath its paws was no longer firm earth or solid rock, but a mixture of shallow water and the soft, forgiving resistance of mud. This required precise navigation, a slow, deliberate rhythm of lifting and settling each slender paw. The quiet squelch of its pads sinking lightly into the mire was the primary sound, a gentle accompaniment to its steady progress. As the fox eased deeper into the reed labyrinth, the air became thick with a different kind of life. Insects, drawn by the dampness and the shelter of the dense vegetation, began to stir. They swirled in soft, hazy clouds, a gentle, almost invisible hum surrounding the fox. A few tiny forms might brush against its exposed skin or the sensitive tips of its whiskers, causing a momentary, barely perceptible twitch of its soft ears. These were not startling movements, but rather a constant, low-level presence, a part of the vibrant, breathing night. The fox, accustomed to the myriad small creatures of the woodland, paid them little mind, its focus remaining on the path unfolding before it. The soundscape within this reed maze was wonderfully muffled. The deeper the fox ventured, the more the distant sounds of the open marsh and river seemed to recede, becoming faint echoes. Only the rustling of the reeds themselves remained clear, a soft, whispery symphony created by the slightest stir of the unseen wind. It was a rhythmic sound, a gentle brushing and swaying that gave the labyrinth a feeling of quiet animation. This pervasive, continuous rustle was a comforting presence, a natural lullaby of the wetland night. Occasionally, a faint distant movement of water could still be heard, a reminder of the broader liquid landscape from which this reed world had sprung. The environment felt enclosed, a series of green walls closing in around the winding path. Yet, this enclosure was not unsettling. Instead, it offered a sense of unique comfort and shelter. The tall reeds created a canopy of their own, filtering out even more of the faint starlight, making the world seem more intimate and private. Wind, which had been a clear presence in earlier, more open areas, barely penetrated this thick vegetation. Only a soft, cool breath could be felt intermittently, stirring the air just enough to carry the rich, earthy scent of damp soil and growing plants. The fox continued its forward journey, its body low and sleek, moving with an effortless grace despite the challenging terrain. Its nose, always alert, drew in the complex sense of decay and fresh growth, mapping the invisible pathways. There was no hurry in its movements, only a steady, calm persistence. Sometimes, a particularly dense cloud of insects might gather close, and the fox would pause, shaking its head gently from side to side. Its tail, a plush arc of rust-red fur, would sweep softly through the air, dispersing the tiny forms without a hint of disturbance before settling back into its careful pace. The soft mud channels twisted and turned, each bend revealing a similar vista of endless reeds, yet each moment felt new. The sense of stability came from the continuous, predictable nature of the journey through this intricate space. It was a quiet world of repetition and subtle change, where one reed-lined channel gave way to another, always leading deeper. The moonlight, now a distant memory, was replaced by a profound, peaceful darkness, broken only by the occasional faint glint on a dewy reed blade or the momentary shimmer of an insect's wing. This deep night journey through the reeds was a meditation in motion, a slow dance with the natural world. The fox's senses were fully engaged, its ears swiveling gently to track the rustle of leaves, its nose constantly sampling the moist air, its paws testing the soft, yielding earth. There was a quiet satisfaction in each careful step, each successful navigation through the winding green walls. The cooling trend of the summer night continued, a barely perceptible shift that added a refreshing edge to the humid air within the labyrinth. The labyrinth continued to unfold, a patterned journey of greens and browns, shadows and whispers. The fox sought no particular destination within this section, simply following the natural flow of the deepest channels, letting the landscape guide its steady progress. The stillness of the surrounding night felt immense, broken only by the delicate sounds of the reed marsh itself. A sense of peace settled over the scene, a quiet comfort found in the intricate detail of the wetland, as the fox continued its slow, deliberate winding path through the heart of the deeply sleeping reed labyrinth. Chapter 9. After navigating the dense, rustling confines of the reed labyrinth, the fox emerged from the final whispering thickets, stepping onto ground that felt distinctly different beneath its slender paws. The clinging dampness of the marsh, with its soft, yielding mud channels and the close, heavy air, slowly gave way to a new kind of terrain. This was a place of gentle ascent, of rising landforms that pushed softly upwards towards the tranquil night sky. The deep night air, which had been thick with the humid scents of stagnant water and decaying reeds, now carried a drier, cooler quality. A faint, almost imperceptible breeze stirred across these low hills. The earth beneath the fox's feet was no longer saturated and silent, but dry and firm. With each careful step, a soft, deliberate crunching sound broke the stillness, a stark contrast to the muted squelches of the marsh. Tiny, brittle fragments of dry soil and scattered small stones shifted gently, whispering beneath its weight. These were the low hills of red soil, a landscape subtly touched by the ancient iron within the earth itself. Under the pale glow of the moon, which seemed to rest higher and clearer in the vast expanse above, the exposed ground took on a muted, rusty hue. It was a deep, warm red that absorbed the faint light rather than reflecting it brightly, creating long, soft shadows that stretched and swayed with the contours of the land. The rust-red fur of the fox blended softly with these colors, a gentle part of the quiet wilderness. Sparse scrub vegetation dotted the slopes, hardy bushes and low, resilient plants clinging to the dry soil. Their leaves, less lush than those of the forest or marsh, were small and leathery, designed to withstand the drier winds. As the fox padded through these patches, the branches brushed lightly against its sides, releasing a faint, earthy scent that was clean and invigorating, a departure from the heavier, more organic smells left behind in the wetlands. Its quiet whiskers trembled slightly, sampling the changing fragrances of the open air. The gentle incline of the hills allowed for a gradual, unhurried climb. The fox moved slowly, its body low to the ground, adapting its pace to a new, firmer footing. The journey felt more open now, less enclosed than the tangled labyrinth, yet still imbued with a profound sense of stillness. Above, the stars remained a countless soft glitter across the dark canvas of the night, their distant light providing a subtle illumination to the rolling land. Reaching a slightly elevated vantage point, the fox paused its steady progression. Its soft ears twitched, picking up the distant, whisper-thin sounds that drifted across the open slopes. The muted calls of night creatures seemed to float on the faint wind, less immediate than the close-by sounds of the marsh, lending an expansive quality to the night. It lifted its head, gazing across the broad, sweeping curves of the hills, where the sparse vegetation created a soft, mottled pattern on the red earth. From this calm perspective, the distant visibility felt vast and peaceful. Rolling landforms stretched away into the hazy distance, a gentle continuum of dry earth and low scrub. There was no urgency in this observation, only a quiet scanning of the landscape, a natural way of understanding its evolving shape. The fox's keen eyes, adapted to the dim light, discerned the faint outlines of further rises and dips, the subtle undulations of the terrain that promised new ecological zones beyond. The air, though cooler than the humid marsh, was not cold enough to cause discomfort. It merely offered a refreshing shift, a gentle reminder that the long night was subtly progressing. This quiet cooling of the atmosphere hinted at the slow, deliberate transition towards the pre-dawn hours, a natural rhythm of the night slowly turning. The fox felt the stability of the dry ground beneath its paws, a welcome sensation after the uncertain footing of the marsh. It moved again, its tail gently sweeping the ground as it shifted its weight, a soft, rhythmic motion. The path it chose was not linear, but followed the natural contours of the hills, winding around clumps of resilient scrub and over small, smooth outcroppings of reddish stone. Each movement was deliberate, a quiet exploration of this new, drier world. The feeling of safety was ever present, a deep comfort in the predictable rhythm of its solitary journey. The soft moonlight cast an elongated shadow of the fox before it, a silent companion on the rising slopes. There was a sense of calm continuity in its journey, a stable progression from one phase of the landscape to the next. The dry crunching of its paws continued, a gentle, repetitive sound that merged with the quiet hum of the night. The fox was simply moving, living its quiet life, perfectly attuned to the subtle shifts of its environment. As it continued to wander the gentle slopes, the distinct scent of dry, mineral-rich earth became a constant presence, a grounding aroma that spoke of sun-baked days and star-filled nights. The sparse scrub offered only fragmented pockets of deeper shadow, but the overall feeling was one of openness, a sense of quiet freedom after the enclosed world of the reeds. The fox adjusted its direction ever so slightly, drawn by an instinct that guided it towards the faint promise of new horizons. The night was still very much present, deep and dark, but the subtle changes in the air, the cooling currents, and the expansive views from these low hills softly suggested a gradual turning point. The quiet progression through these red soil hills was a gentle, unfolding chapter, leading towards whatever calm landscape lay waiting in the gentle approach of pre-dawn. It would continue its padding journey, following the winding trails of the land as the night slowly prepared its subtle transition. Chapter 10. The ascent from the low, rust-hued hills concluded with a gentle flattening of the land, as the fox reached the expansive quiet of a broad grass plateau. Here, the subtle crunch of the red, iron-rich soil gave way to a softer, continuous whisper. The ground beneath the fox's careful paws was now cushioned by long, dry summer grasses, bending and swaying under the steady, unseen presence of the inland winds. This elevated expanse felt different from the enclosed valleys and the dense, humid marshlands. It was a place of open air and sweeping views, where the vastness of the Australian night sky seemed to grow even larger. The wind itself was not harsh, but rather a constant, gentle shaping force. It moved through the tall, straw-colored blades, creating rippling patterns that stretched across the dark landscape like slow, silent waves. Each gust brought with it a clean, dry scent, a subtle departure from the earthy dampness of the marsh and the mineral tang of the red hills. The rust-red fur of the fox rippled gently in the unseen currents, its contours softened by the ceaseless flow of air. The long grasses, ancient and resilient, bowed and recovered, their individual movements contributing to the grand, undulating dance of the plateau. Movement through this wide, open space demanded a different kind of quiet vigilance. The fox's earlier stealth in the tangled reeds and shadowed forest now adapted to the exposed nature of the plateau. It moved with a carefully lowered body posture, its silhouette blending into the shifting lines of the grass. Each step was measured, a delicate balance between a slow, steady progression and the need for concealment in the surprisingly revealing openness. The air, cooled by the elevation and the gentle, persistent breeze, flowed around the fox, a constant, peaceful touch against its whiskers and soft ears twitching with quiet attention. The endless waves of grass created visual illusions in the dim night. Distant clumps of vegetation seemed to shimmer, their forms distorting and reforming as the wind passed through. What might have been a small, still bush could, for a fleeting moment, appear as a larger, moving shadow. The fox's dark eyes, accustomed to the low light of a peaceful forest night, scanned constantly across the open terrain, its gaze following the intricate patterns of the waving blades, searching for any break in their hypnotic rhythm that might signal the presence of movement. This constant observation was a calm, ingrained part of its journey, a quiet curiosity guiding its path. Above, the night sky held its deep, inky calm, yet an almost imperceptible change was unfolding. High above the wind-carved grass plateau, the deep black of midnight had begun its gradual, gentle transition. A faint, ethereal paleness, the quiet promise of dawn, now brushed the distant eastern horizon. It was not yet light enough to truly mark the end of the night, but rather a subtle softening of the darkness, a hint of the long hours that had passed since the fox began its quiet wandering woodland paths. The air, already a touch cooler than when the fox was among the red hills, carried this early seasonal cooling, a gentle reminder that even summer nights move toward their quieter, colder pre-dawn moments. The expansive nature of the plateau offered no immediate shelter, no familiar hedges to curl beneath, or burrows to settle near. It was a space of open, patient waiting, of quiet resilience. The fox continued its slow, unhurried journey, its tail gently sweeping with each fluid step, a silent punctuation to its progress. The sense of stability remained, despite the exposure. The ground beneath was firm, even if covered by the dancing grass. The wind, though strong, was consistent, a reliable companion. Occasionally the fox would pause, sinking lower into the dry grass, almost disappearing within its golden expanse. In these moments of stillness, it would listen, not just for the immediate surroundings, but for the deeper hum of the landscape, the soft sighs of the wind across the vastness. There was a restful quality to these pauses, a moment for its body to gather its quiet energy before continuing. The coolness of the air was a comforting sensation, a gentle counterpoint to the memory of the earlier summer night humidity. It was a natural part of this long nocturnal journey, a subtle shift in the world's breath. The dry stalks of grass brushed against the fox's flanks as it moved, a soft, continuous rustling sound that became part of the quiet ambience of the plateau. There was a unique peace in this open space, a calm breathing that seemed to emanate from the very earth. The wide visibility meant fewer hidden surprises, allowing the fox a more expansive, though still attentive, focus. It was simply a matter of careful, deliberate movement, step by slow step, across the gently waving landscape. As the imperceptible lightening of the eastern sky continued its patient advance, the fox remained on the plateau. The environment, though expansive and open, maintained its quiet stillness, a deep relaxation settling over the land. The quiet tension described earlier was not one of threat, but of constant, gentle awareness, an integral part of life in the wild. The fox, a creature of the twilight skies, understood this rhythm implicitly, moving with an innate comfort through the vastness. It was a journey of continuous gentle discovery, unfolding softly beneath the gradually changing canvas of the night. The widespread expanse felt safe, a peaceful wilderness through which the creature continued its slow, steady wanderings. The night, though approaching its end, held a final, enduring calm. The long, dry grasses would continue their bending dance, carried by the soft breath of the steady winds, awaiting the first true touch of morning light. The ascent from the low, rust-hued hills concluded with a gentle flattening of the land, as the fox reached the expansive quiet of a broad grass plateau. Here, the subtle crunch of the red, iron-rich soil gave way to a softer, continuous whisper. The ground beneath the fox's careful paws was now cushioned by long, dry summer grasses, bending and swaying under the steady, unseen presence of the inland winds. This elevated expanse felt different from the enclosed valleys and the dense, humid marshlands. It was a place of open air and sweeping views, where the vastness of the Australian night sky seemed to grow even larger. The wind itself was not harsh, but rather a constant, gentle shaping force. It moved through the tall, straw-colored blades, creating rippling patterns that stretched across the dark landscape like slow, silent waves. Each gust brought with it a clean, dry scent, a subtle departure from the earthy dampness of the marsh and the mineral tang of the red hills. The rust-red fur of the fox rippled gently in the unseen currents, its contours softened by the ceaseless flow of air. The long grasses, ancient and resilient, bowed and recovered, their individual movements contributing to the grand undulating dance of the plateau. Movement through this wide open space demanded a different kind of quiet vigilance. The fox's earlier stealth in the tangled reeds and shadowed forest now adapted to the exposed nature of the plateau. It moved with a carefully lowered body posture, its silhouette blending into the shifting lines of the grass. Each step was measured, a delicate balance between a slow, steady progression and the need for concealment in the surprisingly revealing openness. The air, cooled by the elevation and the gentle, persistent breeze, flowed around the fox, a constant, peaceful touch against its whiskers and soft ears, twitching with quiet attention. The endless waves of grass created visual illusions in the dim night. Distant clumps of vegetation seemed to shimmer, their forms distorting and reforming as the wind passed through. What might have been a small, still bush could for a fleeting moment appear as a larger, moving shadow. The fox's dark eyes, accustomed to the low light of a peaceful forest night, scanned constantly across the open terrain, its gaze following the intricate patterns of the waving blades, searching for any break in their hypnotic rhythm that might signal the presence of movement. This constant observation was a calm, ingrained part of its journey, a quiet curiosity guiding its path. Above, the night sky held its deep, inky calm, yet an almost imperceptible change was unfolding. High above the wind-carved grass plateau, the deep black of midnight had begun its gradual, gentle transition. A faint, ethereal paleness, the quiet promise of dawn, now brushed the distant eastern horizon. It was not yet light enough to truly mark the end of the night, but rather a subtle softening of the darkness, a hint of the long hours that had passed since the fox began its quiet, wandering woodland paths. The air, already a touch cooler than when the fox was among the red hills, carried this early seasonal cooling, a gentle reminder that even summer nights move toward their quieter, colder pre-dawn moments. The expansive nature of the plateau offered no immediate shelter, no familiar hedges to curl beneath or burrows to settle near. It was a space of open, patient waiting, of quiet resilience. The fox continued its slow, unhurried journey, its tail gently sweeping with each fluid step, a silent punctuation to its progress. The sense of stability remained, despite the exposure. The ground beneath was firm, even if covered by the dancing grass. The wind, though strong, was consistent, a reliable companion. Occasionally the fox would pause, sinking lower into the dry grass, almost disappearing within its golden expanse. In these moments of stillness, it would listen, not just for the immediate surroundings, but for the deeper hum of the landscape, the soft sighs of the wind across the vastness. There was a restful quality to these pauses, a moment for its body to gather its quiet energy before continuing. The coolness of the air was a comforting sensation, a gentle counterpoint to the memory of the earlier summer night humidity. It was a natural part of this long, nocturnal journey, a subtle shift in the world's breath. The dry stalks of grass brushed against the fox's flanks as it moved, a soft, continuous rustling sound that became part of the quiet ambience of the plateau. There was a unique peace in this open space, a calm breathing that seemed to emanate from the very earth. The wide visibility meant fewer hidden surprises, allowing the fox a more expansive, though still attentive, focus. It was simply a matter of careful, deliberate movement, step by slow step, across the gently waving landscape. As the imperceptible lightening of the eastern sky continued its patient advance, the fox remained on the plateau. The environment, though expansive and open, maintained its quiet stillness, a deep relaxation settling over the land. The quiet tension described earlier was not one of threat, but of constant, gentle awareness, an integral part of life in the wild. The fox, a creature of the twilight skies, understood this rhythm implicitly, moving with an innate comfort through the vastness. It was a journey of continuous gentle discovery, unfolding softly beneath the gradually changing canvas of the night. The widespread expanse felt safe, a peaceful wilderness through which the creature continued its slow, steady wanderings. The night, though approaching its end, held a final, enduring calm. The long, dry grasses would continue their bending dance, carried by the soft breath of the steady winds, awaiting the first true touch of morning light. Chapter 11. The gentle movement of the wind-carved grass plateau had slowly given way to a new kind of landscape, one marked by faint, angular shapes emerging from the distant gloom. The rust-red fur of the fox blended with the muted tones of the receding night as it moved, its padding through meadows becoming a quiet approach to something different. The broad expanse of the open field gradually narrowed, funneling into the subtle beginnings of an overgrown edge where the tall, swaying grasses thinned and denser forms began to rise from the earth. The night sky, having offered its expansive, star-dusted canopy for so long, now held a hint of pale change along the very lowest rim of the eastern horizon. It was an imperceptible shift, a soft softening of the deep, velvety black into a lighter shade of charcoal gray, almost like a whisper of light rather than a true dawning. This pre-dawn light began faintly touching the horizon, a promise of the sun yet unseen, but already lending a new, quiet depth to the shapes that lay ahead. The fox's journey led it toward these emerging structures, the silhouette of an abandoned farmstead slowly resolving from the darkness. Here, at the very edge where the wilderness began to reclaim what was once cultivated, derelict rural farm structures stood partially collapsed, worn by years of wind and rain. The quiet air, which had carried the expansive scent of dry grasses, now brought a new mixture of earth, decay, and old wood, a scent layer distinct from the purely natural world. With each careful step, the fox approached this forgotten place, its slender paws moving with an innate calm. The ground beneath its feet changed from the yielding softness of the plateau grass to a more uneven mix of compacted soil and scattered, brittle remnants of human construction. Old wooden sheds, once strong and purposeful, now sagged, their roofs partly caved in, beams askew. A general sense of stillness hung over the area, a quiet echo of past activity that had long since faded. Rusted farming tools lay scattered haphazardly among the overgrown grass, half buried in the creeping vines that now claimed the landscape. A single plow blade, dark and heavy, protruded from a tangle of tough weeds, its surface a deep, earthy orange from the long passage of seasons. A broken wheel rim, perhaps from an ancient cart, rested like a silent sculpture beside a mound of stones, its spokes long gone, leaving only the circular trace of its former function. These objects, once used daily, now contributed to the gentle decay, becoming part of the earth itself. The silence here was a heavier silence than that found in the wild, a stillness shaped by the long absence of human activity. It was not the vibrant, breathing quiet of the deep forest, but a deep calm born from forgotten purpose. The fox moved along what were once clear fence lines, now mostly collapsed, their posts leaning at odd angles, softened by moss and lichen. It followed broken pathways, barely discernible beneath layers of leaves and encroaching foliage, its quiet whiskers trembling as it registered the multitude of new scents. These trails carried the lingering, faint sense of long-absent livestock, a ghost of sheep, a whisper of cattle, carried on the slow, cool currents of the pre-dawn air. The fox paused, its soft ears twitching, processing these ancient messages, which told a story of life that had moved on, leaving only these olfactory memories. There was no urgency in its exploration, only a steady, gentle curiosity about this place where the wild and the human had once met and now silently diverged. As a soft gust of wind stirred through the weathered structures, an occasional creak from a loose board would echo, a low, drawn-out groan that broke the profound quiet before settling back into the deep stillness. These subtle sounds were not startling. Instead, they became part of the soothing rhythm of the dissolving night, like the rustle of dry leaves or the far-off call of a nocturnal bird. The fox's calm breathing remained even, its focus absorbed by the textures and hidden stories of the farmstead. Creeping vines, with their gentle tendrils, had begun to embrace the old wooden walls, weaving intricate patterns of green across faded paint and splintered timbers. They held the collapsing structures together in a fragile, natural embrace, blurring the lines between what was built and what was grown. The environment thus introduced a layer of human historical presence into the fox's natural journey, yet it maintained a deep, calm atmosphere, integrating the past into the quiet flow of the present moment. The fox found a spot of relative shelter near the side of a partially collapsed shed, where a section of roof still offered some overhead cover. It settled near burrows hidden beneath overgrown bushes, its body a soft curve against the earth, taking a moment of rest after wandering through the wide open spaces. The air was cool, carrying the composite aroma of old wood, damp earth, and distant decaying plants, a comforting blend of the familiar wild and the newly encountered. The sky above continued its imperceptible brightening, the pre-dawn light just beginning to touch the very highest points of the derelict structures, outlining their broken forms with a faint silvery glow. The world was slowly, peacefully shifting, and the fox was a quiet witness to this gentle transition. Chapter 12. The fox's journey carried it softly away from the old farmstead's quiet stillness. The air, which had held the faint, lingering sense of forgotten domesticity, slowly began to shift. The outline of the dilapidated structures faded behind, becoming part of the deepening past of the long night. The rust-red fur of the fox blended with the muted tones of the pre-dawn landscape as it continued its patient wanderings. A new presence gradually asserted itself in the dim, evolving light. It was a long, low line stretching into the hazy distance, a corridor of gray and earthen hues. This was a boundary fence crafted from ancient stones, each one placed with a purpose that had long since passed. The stones were uneven, some tilted, others sunk deeply into the earth, half hidden by persistent scrubland grasses and low-lying vegetation. Their surfaces were rough, worn smooth in places by unknown ages of wind and subtle rain, creating a tapestry of texture that spoke of quiet endurance. The fox began to follow this stone fence, allowing its linear presence to guide its path. It moved with its characteristic gentle pace, paws padding softly over dry ground beside the stones. The fence offered a sense of comforting direction after the more unpredictable patterns of the wilder marshlands and the disorienting expanse of the open plateau. Each step was measured, a continuation of the steady rhythm that had carried it through the deep hours of the night. The scrubland on either side of the fence was a mosaic of hardy plants, their branches intertwined, creating a dense, low cover. Beyond this, remnants of open pasture stretched out, hinting at fields that had once known cultivation. Now, wild grasses grew tall and untended, whispering softly in the passing breezes. The environment felt less enclosed than the forest, less humid than the marsh, and more exposed to the vast, encompassing sky. A cooler air began to flow more freely across this open geography. This was the breath of the land at the cusp of dawn, carrying subtle shifts in scent that spoke of distant ecosystems. The faint aroma of damp earth mingled with the dry, grassy notes of the pasture and the sharper, more resinous scent of the sparse scrub. The fox's sensitive whiskers trembled slightly, gathering these quiet messages from the air, building a continuous mental map of its evolving surroundings. Occasionally, the fox would pause in its slow progression, its soft ears twitching, listening to the vast silence of the land. It might then step onto one of the larger, flatter stones, its slender paws finding purchase on the cool, firm surface. From this slightly elevated vantage point, it would gaze across the rolling, indistinct landscape. The fence, a ribbon of gray stone, continued to disappear into the gathering light, a silent testament to past labors. The sky above was undergoing a gradual transformation. The deep, inky black of the profoundest night had long since given way to softer, more translucent shades. Now, a subtle brightening spread across the eastern horizon, a faint pearlescent glow that hinted at the sun's distant approach. The stars, once brilliant and countless, had begun to recede, yielding to the emerging light. This transition from deep night to pre-dawn hues was a slow, majestic process, unfolding with a peaceful inevitability. The fox lingered for a moment on a particularly wide stone, its tail gently sweeping the air behind it. It watched the twilight skies, observing the imperceptible changes in color and intensity. There was a quiet comfort in this predictable shift, a sense of stability in the ongoing cycle of night giving way to day. The stone beneath its paws felt solid and ancient, a small island of stillness in the slowly waking world. As the light subtly strengthened, the details of the landscape began to emerge with greater clarity. The individual blades of grass, previously just a dark blur, now showed their delicate forms. The varied textures of the scrubland bushes became more defined. The stone fence, once a uniform gray, revealed the subtle variations in its components, the lighter quartz veins, the darker inclusions of unknown minerals. This slow revealing of the world was a gentle invitation to observe more closely. The wind, cool and steady, flowed through the open spaces, creating soft rustling sounds among the dry remnants of the pasture. It carried with it a sense of quiet anticipation, not of excitement, but of gentle change. The fox lowered itself from the stone, continuing its careful wandering woodland paths alongside the long, winding structure. The fence, a constant companion, drew it ever onward, a stable line through the evolving terrain. Its exploration of these quiet clearings and scrubland edges was unhurried. The stone fence, though a human creation, had been reclaimed by nature, softened by mosses and lichens, providing nooks and crannies for tiny insects and small lizards, though none were stirring yet in this pre-dawn coolness. The fox moved with an instinctual understanding of its surroundings, its senses finely attuned to the delicate balance of the environment. The journey along the stone fence felt like a passage between worlds, from the wilder, untamed marsh to this more open, historically marked landscape. Yet even here, nature asserted its calm dominance. The fence was merely a feature, integrated into the flow of the land, a line to follow, a temporary guide for the padding through meadows and scrubland. The world remained peaceful, vast and silent, holding its breath for the coming light. The fox settled near a cluster of low-growing shrubs that abutted the fence, its body a familiar curve against the cool earth. A moment of rest after its prolonged wandering was a natural pause in its journey. Its quiet whiskers trembled almost imperceptibly as it drew in the calm, clean air. It was a picture of deep relaxation, finding comfort in the stable presence of the ancient stones and the slow, steady progress of the pre-dawn light. The horizon line, once a vague suggestion, now held a distinct lighter band, a soft promise of the sun. The highest clouds, barely visible moments before, began to catch a faint rosy blush. This slow, predictable brightening brought with it a feeling of reassurance, a steady confirmation of the world's continuous cycle. The fox, nestled for a moment, seemed to absorb this tranquil energy, its presence a seamless part of the quiet awakening. The stone fence continued its unbroken line, a silent witness to the passing hours. It stretched far ahead, a steady path through the remnants of a forgotten time. The fox, having rested, rose with a gentle stretch of its slender paws. It turned its head, gazing across the low hills that gradually sloped away from the fence, each rise and dip now softly illuminated by the spreading pre-dawn glow. The landscape was now clearer, sharper. The gentle mystery of the deepest night was slowly lifting, replaced by the soft clarity of the approaching day. The stone fence corridor, which had been merely a faint shadow in the darker hours, now stood as a tangible guide, its presence a source of quiet stability. The fox moved onward, following its unwavering path, toward the next bend in its gentle journey. The air grew steadily cooler, a confirmation of the pre-dawn chill, but it was a crisp, invigorating coolness that offered no harshness. It was a sign of the earth's quiet turning, of the slow progression from the warmth of the summer night toward the fresh promise of morning. The fox continued its silent travel, its senses alight with the subtle changes, its movements fluid and calm as it followed the winding trails along the ancient stone structure. The journey along the fence was a peaceful and stable one, a quiet continuity as the world gradually revealed more of itself. The gentle brightening of the sky above promised a new phase of observation and movement for the fox as it moved toward the limestone ridge, its path clear for the approaching dawn. Chapter 13. The long, quiet journey of the fox continued, leaving behind the weathered stone fence and the remnants of pastures. Its paws, accustomed to varied textures, now found purchase on ground that slowly began to rise. The terrain shifted with a subtle yet distinct change. The soft and dry earth that had absorbed its footsteps gave way to patches of stone, cool even in the pre-dawn stillness. Gradually, the scattered stones grew more frequent, weaving together into larger formations. These were not the dark basalt of earlier riverbanks, but something lighter, a pale gray that seemed to absorb the faint light from the horizon rather than reflect it. This was the gentle ascent towards a limestone ridge, an ancient spine of rock emerging from the land. The fox padded slowly, its rust-red fur a soft silhouette against the subtle brightening of the sky. The air, which had carried the scents of dry grass and distant wood, began to alter, taking on a new, earthy undertone, a mineral hint that spoke of deep stone. Each quiet step was placed with a deliberate grace, guiding the fox along winding trails that skirted larger rock outcrops. Here, the sparse scrub vegetation clung to the shallow soil, its roots finding purchase in the crevices of the emerging rock face. The world felt quiet, a deep relaxation settling over the landscape as the night gradually receded. As the fox moved closer, the ridge revealed itself fully, a long, low rise of pale limestone, its surface etched with the silent passage of countless seasons. Weathering had carved gentle curves and hollows into the rock, creating natural imperfections that lent a comforting, timeless quality to the formation. And within these ancient carvings, small openings appeared. These were the cave mouths, not grand chasms, but shallow entrances, dark and inviting, offering a temporary reprieve from the cooling air of the approaching dawn. The fox approached one such opening, its soft ears twitching, gathering the faint whispers of the air within. A different kind of stillness resided near the cave mouth. The wind, which had swept across the open plateau and through the fence corridor, seemed to hush here, its currents deflected by the solid stone. The air that seeped from the cave interior was distinctly cooler, carrying a clean, earthy scent, heavy with the minerals of the limestone itself. It was a comforting smell, a deep, stable aroma contrasting with the organic fragrances of the living landscape outside. The fox paused at the threshold, its sensitive nose working slowly, absorbing the nuances of this new environment. With a calm curiosity, the fox stepped gently inside, its slender paws treading lightly on the damp earthen floor just beyond the rocky lip. The light here was greatly diminished, a deep twilight that barely illuminated the immediate space. The entrance opened into a shallow hollow, a cool interior space carved by nature's hand. Sounds within this space were transformed. The softest pat of a paw, the quiet tremor of a whisker, or the subtle shifting of breath produced a faint, amplified echo that rolled softly through the small chamber before fading into silence. It was a gentle, almost musical effect, creating a feeling of profound quietness. The fox did not venture deeply into the dark interior. Its instincts guided it to prefer the transitional shelter zones, places where the outside world was still within easy reach, yet a sense of secure enclosure offered comfort. It moved along the inner curve of the cave mouth, its body low, exploring quiet clearings within the entrance. The floor was smooth in places, worn by eons of water and passing creatures, while elsewhere, tiny loose pebbles shifted beneath its paws, making the gentlest of sounds. This brief exploration was a study in sensory awareness, a peaceful engagement with the unique properties of the stone dwelling. Outside the cave, the sky continued its slow, steady transformation. The deep, inky black of night was now softened by a growing lightness, a subtle wash of gray that bled into the distant horizon. This faint increase in light filtered into the cave mouth, painting the rock walls with the palest, most transient of glows. The approaching dawn was a quiet, unhurried phenomenon, and the fox, from its sheltered vantage point, observed this shift without urgency, its gaze occasionally drifting towards the brightening expanse. The cool air within the cave offered a sense of stability, a consistent temperature that provided a gentle contrast to the ever so slightly warming air outside as the pre-dawn hours progressed. It was a calm place for a momentary rest, a brief pause in the long journey. The fox settled near one wall, its body curled into a relaxed posture, its tail gently sweeping the cool earth. The quiet whispers of the cave, the amplified stillness, wrapped around it like a soft blanket. It was a feeling of deep relaxation, a peaceful mind settling into the quiet comfort of the earth. After a period of serene observation and quiet stillness, the fox slowly uncurled itself. Its movements were deliberate, unhurried, stretching slender paws before rising. The cave, though welcoming, was a temporary haven, a fascinating geological interruption in the continuous narrative of its nocturnal wandering. The wider world, with its shifting light and evolving scents, beckoned gently. The fox took one last deep breath of the mineral-scented air, acknowledging the unique comfort of the limestone. Turning its head towards the increasingly clear light, the fox stepped back out from the cave mouth. Its senses, finely attuned, registered the subtle return of the wind and the broader sweep of the still, cool air. The rocky ridge now spread out around it, a silent testament to time, its rigid stone structures a stark, yet peaceful contrast to the fluid marshlands and soft grasslands it had traversed earlier. The geological complexity of this area added another layer to the fox's long journey, a reminder of the varied textures and forms of the land. As the pale light of approaching dawn slowly strengthened, the fox began to move along the limestone ridge, its path leading it away from the cave mouths. The soft mystery of the hollow interior remained behind, a memory of cool air and echoing quiet. The ridge itself began a slow, gentle descent on the far side, hinting at new terrain beyond its rocky slopes. The fox followed these quiet inclinations, its focus shifting towards the unfolding landscape below, where the first faint hints of a pre-dawn mist were beginning to gather in the distant dips and hollows of a wide valley. Its journey was a continuous flow, each new environment melding softly into the next, maintaining a quiet, predictable rhythm under the evolving sky. Chapter 14. The fox began its gentle descent from the quiet solitude of the limestone ridge. Each step was slow and deliberate, moving away from the cool, mineral-scented stone into a different kind of stillness that awaited below. The faint, subtle light that had begun to grace the ridge now seemed to deepen and soften as the fox followed a winding, narrow path downward. The robust feeling of solid rock under its paws gave way to a softer earth, damp and yielding, absorbing the sound of its careful movement. As the terrain leveled, a new atmosphere began to envelop the landscape. The air, which had been crisp and clear on the higher ground, now grew noticeably heavier, carrying a distinct chill that settled deep. This cooling signaled a stronger, more pervasive seasonal influence, hinting at a quiet shift in the very breath of the land. It was not the sharp cold of a winter's dawn, but a soft, persistent coolness, a gentle reminder that the long summer night was indeed drawing to a close, giving way to the quiet approach of a new day. The valley basin unfolded, vast and silent, before the fox. It was filled, from one side to the other, with a thick, drifting mist. This pre-dawn mist lay like a deep, sprawling blanket, hugging the low-lying contours of the land. Its delicate tendrils rose and fell with an almost imperceptible rhythm, obscuring the familiar world in a soft, ethereal veil. Visibility was profoundly reduced, transforming the landscape into a realm of muted colors and indistinct forms. Trees that stood tall and proud now appeared as blurred, shadowed giants, their edges softened, their details swallowed by the pervasive white. Distant shapes became mere suggestions, fading in and out of view, creating a sense of profound calm and gentle mystery. The fox's rust-red fur, typically vibrant even in dim light, now seemed to absorb the moisture from the air, appearing a deeper, richer hue against the pale backdrop of the mist. It moved with a serene purpose, its senses adapting seamlessly to the changed conditions. Its ears, usually twitching to catch the faintest whisper of the woodland, now seemed to draw inward, focusing on the more immediate, muffled sounds. The world within the mist was a world of quietude, where even a slight movement felt like a grand event. Each paw, slender and careful, was placed softly onto the ground, feeling the new texture beneath. The earth here was much softer, saturated with the condensing moisture of the valley air. Dew had begun its meticulous formation on the very tips of the grass blades, creating tiny glistening beads that caught the nascent light. As the fox stepped through, these tiny droplets clung to its whiskers and the fine fur of its legs, a cool, gentle sensation against its skin. The ground felt cool and comforting, a natural carpet laid out for its slow, steady journey. The air itself held a unique blend of damp earth and the fresh, clean scent of developing dew. It filled the fox's nostrils with each shallow breath, a peaceful, grounding aroma. All other scents, once sharp and distinct on the wind-carved grass plateau and the rocky ridge, were now softened, blended into a single cohesive perfume of moist soil and quiet vegetation. The usual nocturnal smells of distant prey or lurking shadows were subdued, creating a vast, tranquil space where the world seemed to hold its breath. Sounds, too, were entirely muted within this misty expanse. The occasional rustling of dry leaves, the far-off call of a night bird, or the gentle whisper of wind had all been absorbed by the thick, moist air. Only the softest, closest sounds remained, the quiet displacement of air as the fox moved, the gentle brush of its tail sweeping through the low-lying grass, and the almost imperceptible drip of moisture from an unseen branch above. It created a near-silent environment, a pocket of deep calm where external noise faded into a gentle hum of peaceful non-existence. The stillness was profound, inviting a sense of deep relaxation. Above the valley, the sky began its slow, majestic transformation. The deep, inky black of the profound night had softened into a faint blue pre-dawn glow. This was not yet the vibrant, energetic blue of day, but a delicate, almost hesitant shift, a pale suggestion of what was to come. It was a canvas of pale blue gradients, blending seamlessly into the lighter shades as it neared the unseen horizon. This ethereal coloration filtered down through the mist, casting a diffused, even light that seemed to make the very air glow with a gentle inner luminescence. It marked a clear, undeniable transition from the long, dark phase of the night to the delicate, hopeful emergence of dawn. The fox continued its unhurried journey, its pace perfectly matched to the quiet rhythm of the valley. Its form, a soft shadow within the mist, moved with an inherent grace, a natural part of this serene landscape. There was no urgency in its steps, only a calm, enduring movement forward, a continuous progression through the evolving moments of the early morning. Each breath was slow and steady, each observation a quiet intake of the peaceful surroundings. The comforting embrace of the mist created a safe feeling, a stable environment for its journey. The entire valley felt like a place held in suspended animation, a brief interlude between the world of night and the world of day. The mist served as a soft curtain, drawing around the fox, allowing it to rest within the quiet depths of the valley's peaceful embrace. This gentle journey through the veiled landscape continued, a steady, calming progression, bringing the fox closer to the full light of the morning, yet lingering in the soft, tranquil moments before its complete arrival. Chapter 15. The fox's silent journey through the mist-filled valley had slowly brought it to a new edge, a subtle boundary where the diffuse softness of the pre-dawn air began to change. The pale blue gradients of the sky, which had only hinted at the coming day, now deepened with a gentle promise. The thick, cool mist that had clung to the grasses and obscured distant forms began a slow, deliberate retreat. It pulled back like a vast breathing blanket, gradually unveiling the landscape hidden beneath its soft veil. With each passing moment, more of the ground revealed itself, and the air around the fox began to clear, carrying the crisp, clean scent of dew-laden earth. Before the fox lay a shallow river, its surface still mostly veiled by a thin, lingering layer of vapor that snaked across the water in wisps. Yet, even through this remaining mist, a new quality of light was becoming perceptible. This was not the indirect glow from the horizon that had previously guided its path. This was the nascent strength of direct dawn, preparing to touch the land with a clear, golden intention. The fox paused at the very edge of the bank, its rust-red fur blending harmoniously with the muted tones of the awakening landscape. Its keen eyes, softened by the calm of the morning, observed the scene. Smooth stones, worn by countless seasons of flowing water, began to emerge with greater clarity from the riverbed. They were scattered across the shallow expanse, forming a natural, gentle pathway. These river stones, once indistinct in the deeper night, now stood as clear markers, their surfaces glistening with moisture. The water itself moved with a quiet, persistent murmur, a constant low sound that spoke of continuous flow. It flowed around each stone, creating small, almost imperceptible eddies that swirled and dissipated without effort. The sound was a comforting rhythm, a steady pulse in the peaceful wilderness. The fox stretched slender paws forward, testing the damp earth at the river's edge. Its whiskers trembled gently, catching the cool, moist air that still held a memory of the night's chill. This morning, air felt noticeably colder than the warmer currents that had once permeated the deep eucalyptus forest at the beginning of its long night journey. This reinforcing chill suggested a continuation of the subtle seasonal cooling trend, a soft shift in the very breath of the land. Each breath the fox took was slow and deliberate, filling its lungs with the crisp, clean air of the waking day. With calm purpose, the fox began its crossing. Its movements were soft and precise, a testament to its innate understanding of the terrain. One paw, then the other, settled onto the first smooth stone. The stone felt cool and solid beneath its weight, offering a stable foothold. The water, clear and shallow here, flowed gently around its paws, a cool caress against its fur. The current, while constant, was not strong enough to disrupt its balance, merely brushing past with a quiet energy. The fox paused, its tail gently sweeping the air behind it for balance, absorbing the tactile sensations of the river. Its focus remained entirely on the stones, each one a stepping stone towards the other side. The surface of the water, though still holding faint threads of mist, began to catch the first direct shafts of sunlight. These rays, slender and pure, pierced through the faint remaining vapor, creating sharp, luminous reflections that danced on the river's surface. The reflections shimmered like scattered diamonds, bringing a new dimension of light and sparkle to the tranquil scene. The contrast between the deepening shadows beneath the water and the bright gleam on its surface became more pronounced with every strengthening beam of light. The fox carefully lifted a paw, placing it onto the next available stone. It moved slowly, deliberately, its body low to the ground, maintaining a perfect, graceful stability. Each step was a quiet meditation, an ancient rhythm of traversing nature. Below the surface, the shifting currents carried tiny fragments of leaves and unseen particles, creating a subtle, continuous movement that the fox observed with quiet attention. It watched how the water flowed, how it interacted with the contours of the riverbed, how it moved with an unhurried grace. The sound of the flowing water was a gentle companion. It was a consistent, soothing whisper that filled the quiet space, washing away any lingering echoes of the night. This continuous soft sound became a comforting backdrop to the visual transformation happening around it. As the sun climbed higher, the mist truly began its final, graceful ascent, dissolving into the vastness of the sky. With its departure, the landscape sharpened, gaining clearer terrain structure. Distant trees, once blurred shapes, now emerged with distinct branches and leaves. The contours of the valley, previously softened by haze, revealed their gentle undulations. The fox continued its slow, measured progress, one riverstone after another. The coldness of the water, though reinforcing the seasonal cooling, was not unwelcome. It was a refreshing sensation, a clear marker of the new day. The air on the far bank felt crisp and clean, carrying new, faint sense of awakening earth. Its journey across the river was a quiet triumph, a steady passage through a moment of significant transition. The feeling of safety and stability was constant, underpinned by the predictability of the flowing water and the solid ground beneath its paws. Upon reaching the opposite bank, the fox stepped onto firm, dewy soil. Its paws felt the softness of the moist earth, a pleasant contrast to the cool, hard stones. It paused here, taking a moment for silent rest. The warmth of the strengthening sun began to reach its rust-red fur, a comforting sensation that slowly spread through its body. It shook its head gently, dislodging any remaining drops of water from its whiskers and fur. The entire river crossing had been a peaceful experience, a serene interaction with the natural world at a pivotal moment of dawn. The valley, now fully unveiled, stretched out before it under the brightening sky. The gentle morning illumination cast long, soft shadows across the land, highlighting every small detail of the emerging terrain. The fox stood in quiet contemplation, its gaze sweeping across the freshly revealed landscape. It was a scene of deep relaxation and calm breathing, a moment of profound peace at the dawn's edge. The world felt renewed, vibrant with the soft energy of a new day, yet retaining the comforting stillness of the early hours. The river, now behind it, continued its soft, steady flow, a constant presence in the peaceful wilderness. The fox, having completed this significant crossing, was ready for the next phase of its winding journey, following the winding trails that lay ahead under the brightening morning sky. Chapter 16. The morning light, now a clear and steady presence, painted the land with a fresh, pale gold as the fox moved beyond the river's edge. The smooth stones of the crossing receded behind it, and with each step, the ground beneath its slender paws shifted. No longer damp with river mist or soft with valley dew, the earth grew firmer, covered by low, resilient vegetation. This was the open moorland, a vast, expansive canvas stretching gently beneath the brightening sky. Here, the land rose imperceptibly, granting a wider view than any previous part of the journey. The fox's rust-red fur, once a muted tone in the dimness, now caught the early rays, shimmering with a quiet warmth. Tufts of low heather, a tapestry of purple and green, covered the undulating terrain. Their tiny bell-shaped flowers, still holding drops of lingering moisture, released a distinct, earthy, and floral scent into the cool morning wind. This gentle breeze swept across the exposed ground, a constant soft presence that rustled through the heather patches and carried the fresh, clean aroma. The air itself felt different here. It was lighter, clearer, filled with a crispness that bespoke the full arrival of morning. The heavy humidity of the deep forest, the clinging mist of the valley, and the damp coolness of the riverbanks had all slowly yielded to this airy expanse. The cool morning wind, steady and unhurried, carried with it the distant whispers of awakening nature, a symphony of subtle sounds that grew clearer with each passing moment. The fox began to travel with a quiet confidence that matched the open nature of the moor. Its body, lean and agile, moved with a rhythmic grace, covering ground with an unhurried, steady pace. The absence of dense cover meant that its senses were now directed outward, absorbing the wide panorama. Its keen eyes scanned the long distances, using the open sightlines to navigate, detecting subtle shifts in the landscape far ahead. There was a sense of peaceful awareness in its posture, a quiet mastery of this new environment. As the sun climbed, its warmth began to spread across the moor, gradually touching the small, delicate creatures that inhabited the heather. Tiny insects, roused by the rising temperature, started to emerge, their delicate wings fluttering in the warming air currents. They rose in soft, shimmering clouds above the low plants, a gentle dance of life beginning anew. The fox observed them with a calm curiosity, its soft ears twitching almost imperceptibly as it registered their faint, high-pitched hum. Distant bird activity, which had been only a suggestion of calls in the pre-dawn, now increased into a steady chorus. The soft chirps and melodic warbles floated on the wind, carried effortlessly across the wide expanse of the moorland. These peaceful sounds added another layer to the morning's awakening, creating a backdrop of natural harmony. The fox kept its gaze moving, surveying the stretches of heather, the patches of coarse grass, and the occasional solitary rock that broke the gentle flow of the land. With each step, the moor revealed new subtleties. The ground, while firm, had a springy quality beneath the fox's paws, thanks to the thick carpet of heather. The colors, once muted, began to deepen under the strengthening sunlight, bringing out richer purples and greens, interspersed with the pale straw of dried grasses. The shadow of the fox, long and stretched, moved steadily before it, a silent companion across the brightening land. The sense of space was profound, a comforting contrast to the enclosed feeling of earlier forests and marshes. Here the sky felt vast and boundless, an endless dome of pale blue stretching above. The horizon, a soft line in the distance, promised new vistas, yet for now, the fox was content to move through this heather-scented world. It found temporary rest near a cluster of taller shrubs, settling its body low to the ground, its tail gently sweeping the cool earth. Even in movement, there was a deep relaxation, a continuous flow. The warmth on its back, a gentle caress from the rising sun, invited a moment of stillness. The fox paused, its quiet whiskers trembling slightly as it registered the multitude of new scents carried by the refreshing air. The subtle changes in the wind's direction brought different nuances of the moorland, a blend of dry soil, sweet heather, and the faint, fresh scent of distant water. This continuous sensory experience was a part of its constant, peaceful journey. The morning truly unfolded around the padding through meadows. The air was filled not with urgency, but with the slow, steady rhythm of the natural world waking up. The fox rose after its brief rest, stretching slender paws before resuming its unhurried travel. It walked beneath starlight no longer, but under the clear, bright gaze of the morning sun, its path clear and open before it. The moorland, vast and open, offered a profound sense of safety and unburdened exploration. As it continued, the landscape very slowly began to change once more. The heather, while still dominant, started to become interspersed with more robust, slightly taller vegetation, hinting at an approaching rise in elevation. The air, though still cool, held a promise of warmer sun to come, even as the seasonal cooling trend remained a subtle, underlying thread. The continuous journey flowed onward, a peaceful progression through the quiet wildness. The quiet wilderness embraced the fox, offering a profound sense of comfort as it moved across the wide open spaces. Each breath was calm, each movement gentle, contributing to the overall stability of its journey. The moorland, with its simple, repeating patterns of heather and grass, provided a predictable and soothing environment for its steady traverse. The feeling of safety was palpable, woven into the very fabric of the landscape. The sun, now higher, cast a more direct light, causing the dew on the heather to sparkle like scattered diamonds. The fox, always aware of its surroundings, moved without haste, its focus unwavering but calm. It was a silent observer in this awakening world, a part of the grand, slow turning of the day. The journey, a long and peaceful one, continued its gentle unfolding, guiding the fox steadily towards the next segment of its evolving path. The moorland slowly began to transition, its endless expanse subtly folding into higher ground, preparing for a new vista under the deepening morning light. Chapter 17. The journey upward from the open moorland began as a gradual incline, a soft ascent that beckoned the fox toward the rising land. Each slender paw lifted and placed with an unhurried rhythm, finding secure purchase on the cooler earth. The rust-red fur of the fox caught the strengthening morning light, glowing with a subdued warmth as the first true rays swept across the landscape. Slowly, the ground beneath its paws grew firmer, transitioning from the soft, yielding heather to a more solid, stony path that wound gently between emerging eucalyptus saplings. The air, which had been cool and sweeping across the open moor, now began to gather and swirl among the nascent trees. It carried the distinct, invigorating scent of eucalyptus, a sharp, clean fragrance that mingled with the lingering, earthy dampness of the pre-dawn hours. The fox's quiet whiskers trembled almost imperceptibly as it sampled these new aromas, a calm and continuous part of its peaceful exploration. The climb was not steep, but a consistent, winding path that offered a new perspective with every gentle bend. As the fox continued its measured progress, the saplings slowly gave way to more established eucalyptus trees, their pale, smooth trunks rising toward the brightening sky. The canopy here was not as dense as in the deep forest sections traversed earlier in the night. Instead, it was sparse, allowing the morning sunlight to filter through in dancing, shimmering patterns. These luminous shafts of light painted the forest floor in shifting mosaics of gold and shadow, moving with the gentle sway of the branches above. The cooling wind, a constant companion since the moorland, seemed to gain a new voice on this elevated ridge. It swept through the thinning canopy, causing the long, slender eucalyptus leaves to shift and flutter with a soft, persistent rustling. This sound created a rhythmic, lulling ambiance, a natural symphony of the early day. The drifting leaves occasionally detached from their branches, spiraling slowly downward to join the layer of silent forest debris, their descent a calm and unhurried motion. Reaching a slightly higher point on the ridge, the fox paused. Its body settled into a comfortable stillness. Its soft ears twitched, catching the subtle murmurs of the awakened ridge. The rising sun, now higher in the sky, cast its golden glow more directly, yet the temperature remained cool. This persistent coolness, even under the strong morning light, subtly reinforced the sense of a gradual seasonal shift, suggesting conditions that leaned more toward a crisp, near-winter crispness than the lingering warmth of summer. It was a peaceful contrast, the bright light against the cool air, providing a deep relaxation to the environment. From this vantage point, the fox gazed across the broad expanse of the surrounding landscapes. Below, the heather-scented moorland stretched out, now fully bathed in the morning's clarity, its patterns distinct and calm. Further in the distance, dark green patches hinted at the distant forest regions it had explored hours before, now appearing as soft, rolling forms on the horizon. The vastness of the view offered a profound sense of continuity, a quiet reassurance that the world extended far beyond its immediate journey. The fox remained in its resting posture for a long moment, a tranquil observer of the awakening world, its tail gently sweeping the ground behind it, leaving faint temporary marks on the dusty earth. There was no urgency in its gaze, only a steady, calm contemplation. The atmosphere on the ridge felt perfectly balanced, holding both the remnants of the long night's coolness and the fresh, invigorating clarity of the full morning. It was a space of gentle reflection after much wandering, a moment of comfort and quiet appreciation. A faint breeze, softer than before, ruffled the rust-red fur on its neck, carrying the purest essence of eucalyptus. The fox slowly stretched its slender paws forward, one by one, a deliberate and smooth movement, before settling back into a position of quiet repose. The light continued to brighten, painting the trunks of the eucalyptus trees with intricate patterns of shadow and light, each detail becoming clearer in the morning sun. The ridge offered a peaceful, elevated sanctuary, a momentary end to its current path of ascent, before another gentle descent would begin. The panoramic vista from the ridge invited a deep sense of a safe feeling and stability, a tranquil scene under the expansive, calm morning sky. Chapter 18. The gentle ascent from the eucalyptus ridge gradually leveled onto a broad expanse of rust-colored earth. This was the Clay River Bluff, a silent sentinel watching over the winding waterways far below. The fox, with its rust-red fur catching the early morning light, moved slowly to the very edge, its slender paws treading softly on the firm, dry ground. A sense of ancient stillness seemed to cling to the bluff, a feeling of deep quietude that settled into the air. From this elevated perspective, the landscape unfolded like a vast, calm painting. Below, the river systems, ribbons of silver and muted blue, carved their intricate paths through the distant forest and across stretches of open land. They appeared to stretch endlessly, flowing with a peaceful, unhurried grace toward horizons unseen. The interconnected waterways shimmered faintly in the increasing light, each turn and bend telling a story of countless seasons. Morning light, now brighter and more direct, began its slow journey across the bluff's surface. It cast long, serene shadows that stretched and shifted with a quiet dignity, highlighting the subtle erosion patterns carved into the clay over many long years. These patterns formed a delicate, natural tapestry, a geological texture revealed in the soft illumination. Each groove and ridge, each tiny crevice seemed to absorb the light and release it again with a comforting warmth. The clay itself, a deep, earthy hue, held the warmth of the sun, making the ground beneath the fox's paws feel secure and stable. A stronger, cooler wind now swept gently across the exposed bluff. It carried with it a quiet symphony of scents, a blend from multiple ecological zones far below. There was the clean mineral scent of the clay itself, mingling with the fresh, damp aroma of the distant river. Hints of eucalyptus, carried from the ridges and forests, drifted on the breeze, along with the fainter, sweet notes of wildflowers from unseen meadows. The soft air moved through the fox's whiskers, a constant, soothing presence against its face. Its soft ears twitched, picking up the nearly inaudible whispers of the wind as it passed over the wide, open spaces. The fox remained still for a long, quiet moment, its gaze sweeping across the expansive view. It watched the slow unfurling of the morning, observing the subtle dance of light and shadow over the winding trails of water. There was no urgency in its observation, only a calm, deep watchfulness, an inherent understanding of its place within this vast, serene landscape. Its tail gently sweeping a soft arc on the clay, it soaked in the stillness, allowing the cool air to fill its lungs. This high vantage point offered a moment of peaceful rest after the long journey through the changing night and the awakening dawn. The world below seemed to breathe in a steady, gentle rhythm. Despite the growing brightness of the morning sky, the air here on the bluff held a distinct coolness. This reinforced the gradual shift in seasons, suggesting that even in the heart of summer, the influence of cooler inland atmospheric conditions was steadily deepening. The light, though brilliant, carried with it a crispness, a purity that spoke of long, clear days ahead. The fox's body, finely attuned to these subtle shifts, adapted effortlessly to the expanding daylight and the cooler, softer breeze. It was a comfort to feel the sun on its fur, a warm contrast to the persistent coolness of the air. The perspective from the bluff offered a quiet summary of the journey so far, a broad view of the interconnectedness of all the paths traversed. From the dense eucalyptus veil of the night, through creek lines and marshes, over hills of red soil and across grass plateaus, to the awakening moorland and ridges, each landscape was now visible, woven into the grand tapestry of the continent. The fox's quiet whiskers trembled slightly, not from alarm, but from the simple, rich experience of the moment, taking in the full breath of the morning. After this period of calm observation, a subtle shift in the fox's posture signaled its readiness to move again. The call of the landscape below, with its promises of new sights and fresh scents, was a quiet, continuous invitation. It took a deep, silent breath of the cool, clear air, its amber eyes still scanning the distant curves of the river, before turning its head with a slow, deliberate motion. Its next steps would lead it away from this grand outlook, beginning a gentle descent from the high clay bluff. The journey would continue toward the softening edges of the forest, where the light would soon filter differently, and new, quiet pathways awaited its padding through the morning. The peace of the bluff lingered, a comforting memory as it slowly began its descent into the changing terrain below. Chapter 19. The fox descended from the elevated clay bluff with a quiet, unhurried grace, its paws making soft impressions on the loose earth. The cool morning air, which had swept freely across the open outlook, now grew even more distinct as the fox approached the transitional forest boundary. Here, the dense, familiar eucalyptus stands began to thin, giving way to a more open woodland, almost a gentle scattering of trees rather than a solid wall of green. A subtle coolness permeated the air, a persistent whisper of a nearing seasonal shift. Though the calendar still marked summer, the atmosphere carried a suggestion of near winter, a crispness that settled upon the rust-red fur of the fox and rustled the leaves with a drier sound than before. The morning light, now fully dominating the vast sky, revealed every crisp detail in the vegetation. Each leaf, each bark fissure, each slender blade of grass caught the early sun, painting the landscape in tones of gold and amber and deep, muted green. The fox began to navigate a winding path along this evolving edge. On one side, the towering eucalyptus trees still formed a sheltered wall, their shadows long and cool upon the ground. On the other, the woodland opened into broader clearings where scattered saplings stood amidst patches of drier, paler grasses. This gentle transition created a mosaic of light and shade, of dense cover and open spaces, through which the fox moved with an inherent understanding. Its soft ears twitched, picking up the faint stirrings of the cooler inland airflow as it drifted through the thinning branches. The scent of eucalyptus remained, but it was now mingled with the drier, earthier fragrance of exposed soil and sun-warmed scrub. Each step was measured, a slow, deliberate rhythm that carried the fox deeper into this changing environment. It would pause sometimes within the deeper shadows of a cluster of trees, its body a still, quiet presence, before stepping out into a patch of sunlight that felt noticeably less warm than the sun of the deep summer night. The ground beneath its paws varied. Where the eucalyptus was denser, a soft carpet of fallen leaves cushioned its movements. In the more open sections, the dry earth was firmer, and tiny, brittle twigs might offer a faint crackle. Yet, the fox's passage remained remarkably silent, a testament to its long nocturnal journey. It observed the interplay of light and shadow, the way the sun illuminated the underside of a drifting leaf, or highlighted the delicate structure of a spider web strung between two low branches. This ecological transition was a peaceful unfolding, a slow unveiling of contrasting elements. The fox adjusted its movement to the availability of cover, sometimes padding low through the sparse woodland, using the occasional shrub or a small rise in the ground for brief concealment. Other times, it would walk with its head held gently, crossing an open gap with quiet confidence, its tail gently sweeping behind it. The stillness of the morning was profound, punctuated only by the distant, soft calls of birds beginning their daily routines. The overall feeling was one of deep calm and stability, even as the landscape transformed around the fox. There was no urgency in its journey, only a steady progression, an enduring exploration of the peaceful wilderness. The cool air was a constant companion, invigorating without being harsh, carrying the subtle reassurance of clear, clean spaces. It settled into the fine fur of the fox, a quiet reminder of the journey's length and the many shifts in environment it had gracefully traversed. The morning light, now high in the sky, cast long, crisp shadows from the individual trees, defining each trunk and branch with sharp clarity. The fox moved between these defined forms, its presence a quiet, harmonious part of the scene. It paused near a cluster of tall, slender gum trees, their bark peeling in long strips that caught the light, creating a mosaic of textures. Its whiskers trembled faintly as it took in the scents carried on the gentle breeze, a complex blend of dry wood, fresh earth, and the distant hint of wildflowers from a sunnier patch. This peaceful moment allowed for a brief rest, a comfortable pause in the steady progression. The fox stood, observing the quiet clearings that opened up ahead, each one bathed in the bright, gentle light of the morning. The journey continued, a soft winding path along the edge of this temperate forest line, where the summer season held a cooler, more reserved breath, and the world slowly revealed its details under the full illumination of the day. Every step felt intentional, a quiet exploration of the delicate balance between the wildness of the deep forest and the emerging openness of the varied landscape beyond. Chapter 20. The gentle climb continued from the forest's edge, where the eucalyptus trees had gradually thinned, their leaves shimmering with the lingering moisture of the passing night. Each step of the fox was a soft impression upon the yielding earth, guiding it steadily upward along a low, meandering rise that promised a wider view. The ascent was a slow, unhurried progression, a peaceful unfolding of the land beneath slender paws that moved with quiet purpose, each placement deliberate and unhurried. The sounds of the transitioning woodland grew softer behind it, fading into a murmur of rustling leaves and the distant, gentle chirping of awakening birds, a soothing chorus that receded with every upward stride. This gradual elevation change felt less like a demanding climb and more like a natural lifting, a quiet drawing upwards by an unseen, gentle force that guided its path towards the open sky. The ground beneath its paws became firmer with each meter gained, a subtly changing texture from the softer, leaf-covered forest floor to a more resilient, sun-baked earth that promised openness and an expansive vista. The air, though now brightly lit by the full early morning sun, retained a cool, crisp quality, carrying the faint, clean scent of distant damp soil and sun-warmed bark, a delicate blend that spoke of both the receding night and the burgeoning day, a calm transition. Higher still, the sparse trees gave way entirely to a broad, sweeping plateau, an expansive space where the sky felt immensely wide and the horizon stretched, unbroken, in every direction, an endless canvas of soft blues and distant greens. The full early morning sunlight, a soft, pervasive glow, no longer filtered by dense canopies or broken by shifting shadows, spread its warm, golden embrace across the entire landscape. It illuminated the delicate undulations of the plateau, revealing the subtle textures of the sun-baked earth and the varying shades of the hardy, low-lying grasses, each individual blade catching the light with a quiet sparkle of remaining dew, a myriad of tiny, shimmering points. The fox, with its rust-red fur now gleaming softly, almost burnished in the pervasive, comforting light, reached the very crest of this elevated expanse. Its movement slowed, then ceased altogether, a profound stillness settling over its agile form, a quiet pause that stretched into a long moment of undisturbed rest, a natural culmination of its journey. From this high vantage point, the Australian inland wilderness unfolded beneath it, a vast and intricate mosaic of environments that told the silent story of its nocturnal journey. The keen eye could trace the winding trails of ancient rivers that snaked like silver threads through distant valleys, their water now shimmering with dawn's clear reflections, a far cry from the moonlit depths of earlier hours. Darker patches marked the presence of quiet forests, their depths still holding the cool secrets of deep night and lingering shadows, while lighter expanses denoted open moorland, now bathed in the clear, serene light, hinting at the heather scents that might rise with further warming from the sun. The sun painted long, soft shadows across the land, stretching from the sparse trees at the plateau's base to the furthest reaches of the horizon, highlighting the gentle contours of hills and the smooth flowing lines of forgotten creek beds. It was a scene of immense quiet grandeur, a tapestry woven from earth and sky, stretching into the gentle, hazy distance, a peaceful culmination of its wanderings, offering a tranquil sense of completion. The air on this high plateau felt profoundly different, cleaner, imbued with a deep, calm purity that filled the fox's lungs with each slow, rhythmic intake. It drew in a slow, steady breath, the cool air carrying faint, mixed scents of sun-dried grass, distant eucalyptus oil, and the subtle, earthy aroma of the plateau itself, a grounding fragrance that settled peacefully within it. This air, distinctly colder than the humid warmth that had marked the beginning of its nocturnal journey in the eucalyptus vale, offered a peaceful counterpoint to the bright morning light, creating a comforting balance. The quiet whiskers, trembling ever so slightly, caught the delicate currents of the wind, which now moved across the open space with a consistent, soothing presence, a continuous, almost silent whisper over the land, a lullaby of the morning that invited deep relaxation. This refreshing coolness brought a subtle comfort, a gentle assurance of the natural order and the predictable cycle of day and night, of warmth and refreshing chill, all woven into the fabric of the peaceful wilderness. The fox remained perfectly still, a lone, silent observer upon the sunlit plateau, a creature of quiet dignity and unwavering attention. Its soft ears, once so acutely attuned to the delicate, nuanced sounds of the dense forest floor, were now subtly cupped, gathering the quiet murmurs of the vast, waking landscape, the faint hum of insects beginning their day, the distant rustle of leaves in the valleys below, and the almost imperceptible whisper of air passing over the open ground, all blended into a harmonious, calming soundscape. There was no urgency in its posture, no restless twitch of its tail gently sweeping the ground as if erasing its own tracks, only a deep sense of calm stillness, only a profound sense of presence, a calm observation of the world laid out before it, a deep feeling of being part of the sprawling, living tapestry, a thread woven into the fabric of the peaceful mind of nature. The bright light played across its slender paws, casting tiny, delicate shadows that shifted imperceptibly as the sun climbed higher, slowly altering the angles and softening the lines of the terrain below. Each moment that passed was a slow, deliberate unfolding of light and shadow, a serene dance on the quiet earth, promoting deep relaxation. Beneath the clear expanse of the morning, the complex journey of the night felt like a flowing dream, each distinct environment now a visible brushstroke in the larger painting of the land. The dense eucalyptus vale, where its journey had first begun under the cover of a warm summer night, the winding creek reflecting fractured moonlight, the reed-filled hollows, alive with hidden movements, the basalt riverbanks guiding its path, the low hills of red soil rising from the wetlands, the open grass plateau shaped by the constant wind, the abandoned farmstead, a silent echo of a past human presence, the stone fence corridor, a linear guide, the cave mouth of the limestone ridge, offering brief, cool shelter, the pre-dawn mist valley, softening the world in its embrace, the riverstone crossing, marking the definitive transition to dawn, the heather-scented moor, vibrant with morning scents, the eucalyptus ridge awakening, catching the first direct rays, the clay river bluff outlook, providing a sweeping view, and the edge of the temperate forest line, where the trees gave way to the open land. All were now part of the sweeping panorama, interconnected and peacefully, harmoniously present. The early morning light softened all edges, blending the different terrains into a harmonious whole, revealing the quiet unity and continuous flow of the wilderness, a truly calming sight. The fox settled its body just a fraction more, its weight distributing evenly upon the dry, firm earth of the plateau, finding an exquisite comfort in the solid ground. A feeling of deep relaxation seemed to emanate from its very core, a gentle unwinding after the sustained journey, a release into comforting stillness that permeated its entire being. Its gaze, steady and unwavering, took in the distant shimmering haze that marked the furthest reaches of the inland forest mosaic, a horizon so vast it hinted at endless peaceful possibilities. The vastness was not overwhelming but rather profoundly comforting, a testament to the enduring stability and rhythm of the natural world, a world that continued its slow, predictable dance. There was a quiet strength in the land, a continuous, predictable flow of life that unfolded with each passing moment, each subtle shift in the light, each season, each day, all existing in a state of quiet balance. This feeling of safety permeated the air, a deep sense of belonging within this immense, tranquil space, offering stress relief to anyone witnessing such calm. The stillness around the fox deepened, becoming a profound, almost silent hush, broken only by the gentle sigh of the wind as it drifted over the plateau and the far-off, muted calls of unseen birds echoing from the valleys below. It was a moment of complete and utter rest, a culmination of hours of purposeful movement and watchful navigation, of quiet exploration and patient observation. The sun, now higher in the sky, cast its gentle warmth upon the ground around its paws, a contrasting sensation to the cool air that still flowed around its rust-red fur. This blend of warmth and coolness brought a peaceful balance to the morning, a tranquil feeling of being perfectly aligned with the natural world, wrapped in a blanket of calm. The whole vast expanse seemed to breathe with it in a collective, slow rhythm, inviting a deep sleep to settle over the land, a truly relaxing sleep. The long night's travels had led it here, to this sunlit plateau of final stillness, offering a quiet perspective on the grand scale of the Australian landscape, a gentle conclusion to a persistent journey. The passage of time, from the warm summer night to the crisp, near winter-like morning, was palpable in the lingering coolness of the air and the clear, bright quality of the light. The journey's experience, with all its subtle shifts in terrain and atmosphere, its myriad scents and quiet sounds, now resided as a soft, quiet memory within the fox's steady presence. It remained, a watchful, calm figure, embodying the peaceful continuity of the wilderness, a sentinel of tranquility. This sense of completion was not an end, but a deep, comforting pause, a serene moment of deep relaxation before the natural rhythms of life continued their gentle, ceaseless unfolding across the vast, peaceful land. The story of its journey settled into a long, slow breath, a final, quiet testament to the enduring comfort of the wild, leaving behind a profound sense of peace and slumber, like a bedtime story for the world itself.